it will be Hello World once again. You can download this from the site that we have from Moodle, and once again apply it as an example. So in this case, once you imported the folder Hello World, or if you want, create perhaps your own Hello World in your user space. So perhaps just new project or other, excuse me, once again, you can create PyDev project, so a PyDev project, and just add that once you create that. So just to show you an example again, so Hello World 2, for instance. So you can do that. One way to sort of transfer some of the folders. The reason why you might want to do that is because some of the files in Hello World might be relevant or might be a bit not necessarily all set up for your system as easily. So the interpreters and other kinds of things may need to be reconfigured, whereas in the Hello World folder it may be not configured properly. So it doesn't really matter. Actually, you can still use the Hello World folder. If you want to import the Hello World folder, you can simply just go to new or import directly if you right click on the screen and go to existing projects into workspaces and simply browse and select the directory where you might find Hello World. So in this case, desktop, and then you can import it from there. So I'm not going to do it because I already have it, but just to show you how you do that. Okay, so now we're assuming that Hello World is all set up. One thing you want to do is then set up Jython. So Jython is kind of like Python in that it needs to have a kind of interpreter, a place in which you can use the specific Jython modules so we can run. And so this is the actual Jython jars. So jars are essentially compiled Java code that will allow us to talk between or to Java from Python. In this case, okay? So we're going to go to do this, to configure it, we're going to go to Preferences, and then we go to PyDev, and you'll see we have these interpreters, and then the Jython interpreter can be selected. So Jython can then allow us to communicate to Java from Python if we incorporate this interpreter. You can see I already have it on mine, but let's remove it just for the sake of argument and create a new one. So let's call it Jython. So we go ahead and create a new Jython interpreter, and we're going to browse for where those jar files are. Jython, you can see, is in my main hard drive. It's Jython folder, and there's the main jar, Jython 2.7, which is the one I want for my Python 2.7. And you can see now it's referenced, and it should now reference the specific jar files that I need. You can go ahead, ignore that message, and you can see now I have a reference to the specific jar files. Now I'm going to also, well, I'll talk about this later, but I'm going to also use some other jar files, other Java projects in this one, and I'll show you how to configure those in a moment. But that's just to set up the Jython interpreter, which will be used to actually run the project. Okay, so we'll apply that. And then press OK. And then we're going to go to our first example. And our first example today can be found if you're using the folder from Hello World, or the folders, in this case the package, which is under Hello. It's called, the specific module is called Try This. And from there we're going to go ahead and set it up to run. So look at Try This. You can see what is basically Python code. However, it's going to reference two kinds of functions that are actually Java-based. That is one specific class called statistics that's calling a method called compute mean. It's a static method that we'll be using, and another Java method called math.round. Okay, so how do we actually then run these? These are you can see that they're referenced from Java, so you can see this is calling from Java lang import math, and then stats statistics. So one of these, this one, I've actually created it. It's a jar file that I have created and applied. This one comes from the standard Java library, math. It's a standard kind of reference or a standard library within Java, just like Python has a math library as well. So we'll be running both of these. Now, to run them locally, we need to set it up for the specific project. So the specific project needs to have a reference to the jar file. Since statistics comes from a jar file, math comes from the standard Java library, which is already referenced in Jython. So we don't need to do anything about math. You can see there's an error listed here, but we can ignore that because sometimes, unfortunately, PyDev doesn't always automatically update when you set up the libraries. Sometimes it does, but it seems to have a slight bug in it, but never mind, you can ignore it since it'll work anyways just fine. But this one, you can see statistics is something I created, as I mentioned. So to reference it, we simply go right-click on the Hello World, and we press Properties. And by pressing Properties, we're going to see things. We're going to see different resources, builders, and other kinds of things mentioned in this specific sort of menu options that we get. And where we want to go is to the PyDev Python path. We're going to have to give it some Python or kinds of path references so we can run it. And one of the things that we need to reference are these external libraries. These are libraries that are external to Jython and Python that we need to actually run. And so we need statistics, the stats jar that was created by myself. You can see I've already loaded a number of local external libraries, but we can remove them for the sake of argument and then reload them. So to load them, one goes to the add zip jar jar and EGG option. This allows us to add additional jars, basically, and additional also Python specific libraries .egg files. So we go to the desktop, and we can find Hello World. So it's located here, or wherever you put Hello World, you want to get it. The stats jar is located in the data folder, so we're going to import that into our local library. We're going to apply it as a kind of library. So I'm going to run this real quick to make sure it works, just to make sure it works, and hopefully it works. Yes, okay, it will work. Okay, so what I just did there is just tested that the jar has been uploaded. So the jar is now a reference, so I can essentially access the statistics library. So you'll see that in this Python module, we're basically using Python throughout it until we get to line 26, where we're computing the mean. So what's happening here is I have a dictionary called DER. It has 3 values. Then I create this list called DND. This is not efficient coding, but bear with me with the example, please. You'll see that what I'm going to do is append some items, essentially the numbers, from DER into DND. And then I want to compute the mean. So computing the mean is basically, this is the jar reference call method. So computing mean is you can see, if you look at the specific project where this comes from, statistics.compute mean, we can see what it does. So we go to the Java project, and we can see the functionality compute mean. It's listed right here. So typically, you probably don't want to look at the code for another language. I mean, the whole point of this is that you want to be able to call different methods as you need them, given that they will do certain functionality for you. So for instance, in this case, computing the mean. So I'm still looking for the compute mean that I'm actually using, and oh, here it is. Okay, so it's basically it's a Java function that's going to do a compute mean of calculation. It's going through a couple other calculations, a way essentially to compute the mean. So nothing really complicated here. And so what's happening is that it's requiring a kind of list, an array from a Java point of view that I need to essentially use this method. So I had to convert it to this list, this Python list, so I can use it to compute mean. So I give it the specific input that it requires. I can see the Java methods by pressing the dot. So if I go on the compute mean method, I can just go back one space and press the dot, and that allows me to see the different Java methods that are there. So this is a powerful way for me to then see what Java is doing without necessarily knowing the code. And all I have to do is find the method that I want, or that I find useful for myself, or that what I want to use. So it's that compute mean method, and it's asking me to apply basically a list or an array, and it's something equivalent to these double values or float values. You can see I reference them as floats at Python, and Java can take them as doubles. And so now it's going to do that compute mean, and it'll print that mean. So if I run the code, what you're seeing there is that it basically, save that, you'll see this output print mean. So the mean is 2.0, so mean of 1, 2, 3 is definitely 2. So this mean value is coming from Java. And you can see down here are some other different calls that I'm doing. So I'm pretending there's some kind of tip calculation and tax calculation to see a total cost of something. Now I'm referencing the Java library math.round. So here there's no jar reference to math.round. Math is coming from a specific Java library within Java itself, which is already referenced through the Jython library. So here we simply will make a call to the round method. In this case, unfortunately, PyDev doesn't let me see the actual round method, but we can look it up using just the internet, of course. We can simply go to a website and we can say math Java, and that'll take us to the Java docs. So Java has what's called Java docs. Java docs are basically documentation of different of various libraries, as well as other people's code that one can look up and see what they do in terms of functions. So so the mean function, or the round function, excuse me, can be looked up, and here we can see it. It returns the closest integer to the argument with ties rounding up. So that explains what the method does. So once again, we don't have to go into code. We have to simply just look at the functionality to use it. And so what I do is take the various Python calculations that are done over here, and or I take the values and then I actually do the calculations here, and then the outer part, the math part, .round, I can then do the Java calculation. So I'm rounding it using Java, but all these specific calculations are using essentially Python values. So it's a combination of Python and Java together. So this output is basically an output produced by Java. These are my Python inputs, and this is another Java output. So a very simple example of how to use Jython and how to use Java libraries, standard libraries such as math, as well as libraries you import. In this case, called statistics, that I created myself, and you saw the functionality over here as well. So that's an example of how you do that.